Hello, you beautiful positive beings, and welcome to the space and time. My name is Gabriel Lugo, and here I talk from self to self. Today I'm going to cover another channeling from L&L Research, of course, and again from Quo. And it's a topic that I am not very familiar with what it's being said out there, and I've only seen glimpses of it, but it's an interesting term that it's been used for describing certain behaviors in people. So to me is a little eye-opening, this channeling, because it does reveal the essence of this behavior. Now remember, to me the most interesting part of these channelings is to understand the psychology of this beautiful philosophy that we have for mind, body, spirit complexes, and the self plus the polarization and everything else that goes with the philosophy of the law of one. So this term is narcissism, which I'm not somehow in my English community, or at least in the English speaking circles that I am around, I've actually never heard it, to be honest. Maybe a couple of times, but it's only in the Spanish community that I have heard, and I've heard a lot of this term being used, and I'll get into my impressions as to how this has been used and what really causes noise for me with narcissism, but I'll get to that. I'll probably cover this in 3 parts because it's not a very long channeling, but it has different parts. Speaking about, like, half of the channeling is about this topic, so let's see. I'm just gonna cover from the beginning, and again, it's about this behavior that some people have, and I think it's very interesting what Quo says. So let me start from the beginning, where Quo gives their usual greeting, and it's Jim channeling this in 2019, December 14. Of course, this is a good time to say that you can find this channeling in the description of this video on YouTube. So Jim channeling, and Quo says, "I am Quo and am with this instrument at this time. We are most pleased to be able to make this contact with this instrument and with this group, for by calling for our services, you offer us the opportunity to move further and further along the same path upon which you travel. For our service is our being, our foundation, and our destination. We are always pleased to be with this group, for you have many concerns that are universal in nature for this planetary population at this time, and we feel that much may be accomplished in offering signposts and guidelines, shall we say, that people may use in their spiritual journeys. And in order to do this most effectively, we, as always, would ask you to remember that we are not ultimate authorities. We are travelers upon this path, as are you. We would ask you to examine the words and thoughts that we offer to you today and use the ones that feel right and appropriate to you at this time as you will. Please leave behind any word or thoughts that do not feel applicable in your life at this time. This allows us a greater freedom in expressing ourselves in answering to your queries. May we ask if there is a query with which we may begin." I like to read sometimes the way Quo greets the group, because they always emphasize basically what all of us say: please take what resonates, don't take us as authorities. And this, I think, should be said to anybody who is transmitting a message. Especially, I've just realized, before I get into this channeling, I've just realized that the spiritual community has a penchant for creating pedestals, authorities, idols of people. And I'm not sure why. I suppose there is the behavior of feeling, resonant with the person and sort of giving them an authority. And at certain point, this begins to erode people's authority. Perhaps because we have been entrained this way. We have been conditioned to always follow authority and always respect authority. Well, I'll be the first one to tell you, never do that. You give your liberties away. So I understand respect for what other people do, and I think that's what it's sometimes misused as authority. Respect and love is one thing, or respect out of love, it's quite different than just respect for fear. Both can be authorities, but it's a different kind of respect. So yeah, I could just read this and leave it at that, but I love to give my opinions. So on the same line that Quo says, please just take whatever feels applicable and leave the rest. It's a much better way to talk as friends. Yeah. So Austin is the one making the questions, and he is actually relaying a question from Aaron. Now, this is not Aaron Apke, as far as I know. I think they have a friend, Aaron, for ages. I don't know how long. So I don't know if it's the same person, but Austin says, we have one from our good friend and volunteer, Aaron, who writes, could you speak about the metaphysical implications of the personality disorder called narcissism? These individuals do considerable damage to others due to their lack of both empathy and self-reflection. Are these entities young souls going through an evolutionary phase, or on some level, are they conscious of the choices that they have made to pursue what appears to be a service to self path? So this starts the conversation on narcissism, and it's interesting that Aaron, as he makes the question, he denotes the possibility that they could be young souls going through an evolutionary phase, an early one, of course, and are they conscious of the choices that they're making to pursue what appears to be service to self path? Now, the service to self path I'll definitely cover in another episode from this same channeling. Again, you can go read it and check it out on your own. I actually recommend that you do, but I will cover it, like I said, in another episode. Here I'm just going to cover this one part. And something else that is interesting to talk about is, of course, that what we call narcissism is the people that have a very damaging relationship with people, because it's all about themselves, right? Very selfish, and that is, or appears to be, a service to self path, but that's a matter for later. Now, what does Quo says? Quo says, actually interesting. Before I read it, it seems that I don't know. Quo says my sister. It's actually Austin who asked the question, and Aaron seems like a male name to me, but could be a woman too. And it does seem like it's the Aaron that they have been working with for a while. In any case, it's just me rambling. Quo says, I am Quo and am aware of your query, my sister. The term narcissism is one which has been much used throughout the psychological history of your peoples. It is a term which is usually reserved for entities which have such an overbearing and overweening opinion of their own being and abilities that they seem to be without any conceptual idea of the equality of all beings. Their conflated opinions of their natures tends, in many cases, to make them blind to those areas within their own being that may benefit from adjustment, shall we say. So this is the beginning of their description. They say that narcissism has been used for a while here. It's certainly being used a lot nowadays. There's a lot of sensitivity in our society, especially now. There are reasons for that, and I respect that. They say that it is a term which is usually reserved for entities which have an overbearing and overweening opinion of their own being and their own abilities, and they sort of lack, the conceptual idea that we are equal, that we're all the same, and it's all about themselves. And this, you see, one interesting point is that they say that in many cases they also lack the capacity to see in themselves the benefit from adjustment. I don't know if they're going to expand on this adjustment, but this adjustment seems to be the evolution, of yourself, the harmony that you can achieve. Because as you will see, and we go through these episodes and this channeling itself, there is a huge possibility for the narcissist to become, let's call it, to go towards the spectrum of enlightenment, to that extreme. There's a huge chance. Everybody is actually. Everybody is the creator, and all they're searching is unity. Let's just start from there. All people are interested in unity, whether they know it or not. Even negative beings are interested in unity. They're trying to unify the world so they can dominate it, for sure, but they're trying to unify it anyways. Then the universe, they go to planets, universe, and so on. Eventually they realize that they actually are the creator, and the whole story. But I'll continue reading. Quote, when they say, "The narcissistic point of view is that which in many instances appears to be infantile in its expression of selfhood. The self is seen as that which is supreme. It is that which is put forward constantly and unabashedly to others as an example of what others should be. This type of behavior is often rooted in a much deeper sense of the lack of self-worth that then, once begun to be recognized by the one expressing narcissism, affects this entity in a manner in which hardens its position as one which is superior, though feeling inferior within. This sets up a dichotomy for the narcissistic entity, feeling that there is no firm foundation within itself for any real self-appreciation of the self. It then doubles down, shall we say, upon the bet that it is indeed supreme in some fashion." So you can see that the narcissistic entity is actually quite confused. Let's start from the beginning when they say that the point of view is that which in many instances appears to be infantile in its expression of selfhood. The infantile expression. You ever seen a kid that is it's kind of toxic? It always wants to do its thing, and that kid in the playground that wanted to dominate others and kind of bully them. That was because they had certain issues at home. Clearly, a lot of our houses where, some of us are survivors, on the houses in which we were raised, and it's actually an accomplishment to not have become a bully, because we grew up in a very sick society. Do I even need to expand on that? Not really. But yeah, this is the infantile expression to me of selfhood, of me. Me, I need attention, and I gain it by doing things to others that make me feel superior. That's basically what it is. However, inside, you feel inferior. The self is seen as that which is supreme, yes. It is that which is put forward constantly and unabashedly to others as an example of what others should be. Yeah, there is, you start creating this personality to hide all the fears, the anger, the pain, and so on. This type of behavior is often rooted in a much deeper sense of the lack of self-worth. Again, that's what generates it. When you're treated as a child as somebody who is unworthy, these behaviors start to accumulate. You want to show the world something. You want to show that you are valuable, and in some cases it just turns in this self-adoring behavior of me. It is me. It's only me. The then once begun to be recognized by the one expressing narcissism affects this entity in a manner in which hardens its position as one which is superior, like I said, though feeling inferior within. This sets up a dichotomy for the narcissistic entity, feeling that there is no firm foundation within itself for any real self-appreciation of the self. It then doubles down upon the bet that it is indeed supreme in some fashion. So the psychological effect is that as you see that there is no space for you to love yourself, you kind of the more you realize that there is no place for you to love yourself, I'm not talking about you, but in general, the narcissistic entity, then it kind of like increases its degree of feeling superior, supreme. So, quote keeps saying, this type of a lack of self-worth is oftentimes adopted by entities pre-incarnatively in order to find the true nature of the deepest self. In other words, there is the need pre-incarnatively noted to bolster the true appreciation of the nature of the self. Thus, the challenge is given the self during the incarnation to find the way through the maze of narcissistic enhanced opinions that are produced by the entity in an effort to put up what amounts to a sham appearance to others. So, usually programming, as far as I understand it, sometimes programming can be for you to overcome what has, I would say there are no mistakes, right? So programming of the incarnation allows for the possibility of the person incarnating in a very challenging scenario, family, environment, country, so on. So this creates the challenges, because you're not here just to be the creator and have, overpower enhanced abilities. You're here to overcome your own challenges. That is just what the creator wants. When you play a video game, you don't create the ultimate character. You can always cheat and use either the game genie. How many of you remember the game genie? Or the code now in computers for OP. You don't do that. You want to go through the challenges. That's what the programmer decided. Programmer for a video game, programming yourself for the incarnation. That's what the creator does. So the challenge is this, to have the opportunity to explore the deeper self through these enhanced opinions that are created through the narcissistic point of view. And so that is what creates the maze, as they say. The maze of narcissistic enhanced opinions is the environment that you're raised in. Now, one of the final paragraphs, kind of a long one, they say, thus it is hoped pre-incarnatively that the experiences with others will be of such an intensity that eventually there will be the breakthrough of the self that is expressing as the narcissist to discover that the entities surrounding the self are the ones who have the most balanced point of view that is offered as an objective referent for consideration by the narcissistic perceptions. This is a difficult path to follow, to depend upon the understanding and loving responses of entities about the narcissist is to look into a mirror and see that which eludes the narcissist. That is, the everyday appreciation of the appearance and abilities of all other selves. This appreciation then can be, if the narcissistic entity is successful, turned back or reflected upon the self in a manner which pulls away or sheds the layer of narcissistic idolatry of the self. When these layers are removed, then, if the narcissistic entity is successful in surviving this removal of the facade of the self, then it is possible for there to be a birthing of a new and risen being that sees itself in equality with all other selves. This paragraph it's like a sort of recipe, at least for consideration of this word. I said that I was going to give my opinions, and here we go before I read the last paragraph. You see, at least I have to admit, it's in my Spanish audience and in some of the speakers, let's say, of promoters of the spiritual knowledge and so on, that I hear the word narcissist as almost like the devil. It's like something to be condemned. It's something to avoid. And it's not... Yes, I do have a soft spot in my heart for everybody. I'm sorry if that offends people. But that is the truth. I have a soft spot for people who are, especially narcissists, who have such a terrible life, have such a terrible opinion of themselves, truly, because we know that they're hurt. And although this is normally portrayed and projected on men, this is actually true of women. So it's not just about men, although the vast majority, of course, men have the propensity of becoming narcissists because, guess what, is a macho society. So in fact, maybe I'm going too far here to say this, but I believe that the Spanish population, especially in the countries that of the Americas, there's a huge aspect of humanity to heal, which is the male macho, the strong man still needs to be healed. So a lot of people grow up in these environments, and this to me is a breeding ground for the possibility of being narcissist. So the point that I'm trying to get at is that oftentimes I hear this as sort of like demonizing these narcissists, right? There is this I hear some comments from people who are so spiritual, they're very spiritual, and they say, F this narcissist, I finally got rid of him, I hate him. And I mean, I'm not questioning whatever the narcissist did, but it kind of like shocks me that people who use this language of understanding, the self, people's psychological behaviors, and everything else that really is the quote-unquote spiritual community, that, I don't know, it just bothers me. I have to say, it bothers me that there is no clear perception of the compassion that should be I'm not saying stay in the relationship. That will be covered in the next episode, I think. But just to talk about these people this way, to create this anger. I suppose people need to vent their anger, but I mean, my job is just to point out those things that to me are not in consonant with a harmonious being. I guess that's my point, you see. And so this paragraph, to go back to the channeling, it's very clear, to show that, first of all, the narcissistic entity is on the path of releasing this. Now, is it possible? We don't know. It's all up to the person. And we'll get to how to deal with people like this. This will be covered in the next episode, but I'm just going to reread the paragraph because I think it shows the steps that the narcissist will have to take. So here they say, okay, it is hoped pre-incarnatively, this is when the entity program itself, that the experiences with others will be of such an intensity that eventually there will be a breakthrough of the self that is expressing as the narcissist to discover that the entities surrounding the self are the ones who have the most balanced point of view that is offered as an objective reference of consideration by the narcissistic perceptions. So in essence, it is hope that the narcissist will see in others that same projection of what it's hoping to see, because aren't we all mirrors of each other? So when you see that there is compassion towards you, then you may heal that inner inferiority that is making you create this narcissistic perceptions of the self. So again, we'll cover this in the next episode, I think is the next part of this question, but we'll see. They keep saying this is a difficult path to follow, to depend upon the understanding and loving responses of entities about the narcissist is to look into a mirror and see that which eludes the narcissist. Well, what is that? That is the everyday appreciation of appearance and abilities of all other selves. So narcissists have the challenge to see in other people the love and appreciation for all other things. This appreciation then can be, if the narcissistic entity is successful, turned back or reflected upon the self in a manner which pulls away or sheds the layers of narcissistic idolatry of the self. So in looking at others and seeing their behavior towards others, it's almost like, I don't even have to explain this. If you are around people who are loving and caring and you don't see, the biggest challenge for a narcissist, especially in relationships, is that the other one is hurt, because the other one being hurt is what creates even more or exacerbates this behavior. Now, see, this is where it becomes delicate, because somebody who gets hurt is sensitive to the behavior of the narcissist. So it becomes the dilemma of, should I be around this person? Should I not be around this person? Well, that depends on you, of course. And, there's no judgment, of course, if you can't. But I think this is more directed to family, friends, and I know relationships can get very bumpy. So it really depends. But in any case, it's that's the dynamic. For whatever it is the case, I'm not here to give advice, but just to show the dynamic is to the narcissist to see in other people that, hey, you know what? I should love myself a little bit more. Now, how's that accomplished? That's not for me to answer. That's something that is revealed by the interaction between one person and the other. When these layers are removed, then, if the narcissistic entity is successful in surviving this removal of the facade of the self, then it is possible for there to be a birthing of a new and risen being, that which we all want, that sees itself in equality with all other selves. Of course, because they are on the path of discovering the same thing we are discovering. Last paragraph, they say, this is the beginning then for the journey of seeking in a conscious manner, so that the shell of narcissistic facades is left behind and the new being is now available for newly enhanced experiences. These experiences will show to the new being that it has capabilities that are greater than even its narcissistic opinion of itself was in its past. It's the last word, actually. So, yeah, just like any other entity, especially, I think the most important thing for a narcissist to realize is that, I will say, you know how we love a story of somebody who, let's say, was a criminal, killed people, robbed places, and so on, and all of a sudden just gets rehabilitated. There's a story, a Buddhist story of Angulimala, a criminal. Long story, I won't tell it here, but he was just you talk about criminal people here. This guy was just the most dangerous man around. And long story short, he became enlightened by the Buddha. And yeah, Angulimala. It's an interesting story. So we all love that story because it's saying like, wow, you know, this person got rehabilitated and is now, you know, serving others. Beautiful, right? And so the same thing can happen to a narcissist as it becomes aware of its own potential and, you know, the beauty of being equal with everyone else and everything else, actually. So that last sentence, when they say, these experiences will show to the new being that it has capabilities that are greater than even its narcissistic opinion of itself was in its past. So even when it was feeling superior to others and magnanimous in its own self, well, even that falls short to the capabilities that it can develop once it's seen as equal with others. So beautiful path for the narcissistic entity. The last thing I would say that I hear a lot is that it's interesting. I've actually heard people, I've seen couples who simply break up, and I know both of them. They break up just like any other couple would, and this term is used around to say, oh, he was inserts vulgar word. That sounds weird for me. A vulgar word here. Insert it before saying that guy, meaning that, you know, that person was a terrible narcissist, and I know the person. I know he wasn't, or she wasn't. It's mostly a he, like I said, but I know that this is the same thing that people who are now getting into this slang words, they mean when they say, he's a negative person, I can see Orion in them. Yeah, well, in that case, we're all narcissists to a degree. So my point is that there is a spectrum of behaviors that everybody has. We all have a sort of narcissistic behavior. You see, the problem is that we always look at ourselves when we're ignoring our shadows. We all look at ourselves like, well, of course I'm the man, you know, I'm the guy. Everybody else is wrong. And that guy, my guy, that guy is he's a narcissist. He's an Orion lackey, and so on. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to see people do this, but again, it's part of the beginning stages of understanding these words, what they mean exactly. So I hope I was able to give some clarity, at least from the channeling of Quo. And like I said, there are follow-up questions to this, and They're kind of long again, so I want to cover them in another episode, and it's going to have to do with how do you deal with a relationship like this, and also, are they negative beings? Well, we'll find out in the next episodes. So here is where I come to the end of the episode, and I tell you, thank you, I appreciate you, I love you, my other self. I have nothing else to say but thanks. That's it. I'm grateful for you being there, and I already said that I love you, but it's never enough. So I love you, thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.